All righty, folks. We're here with Eddie Burke, our guest, Junior. He's now turned in from being a guest to more of kind of like a recurring, you know, like host, like a co-host. I don't
Co-host.
know. Yeah, you're just kind of
Co-host?
like,
What?
I mean, not like a co-host, but like he's going to be back again. He's
Yeah.
just like it's fun hanging out with Eddie, and he knows some things, and
You guys
that's
give me too much credit.
well, yeah, you're right. You're actually kind of pretty dim.
Yeah.
So yeah, there we go. We'll just reel it back in. But
Yep. Decent hair and
it's mostly we just like hanging. We're just all just like hanging out, and
Pretty much.
dude, you do know. It's kind of makes no sense because like I hear you talk, and I'm like, damn, he kind of does know what he's talking about. And I'm like, you've only been doing this for like 4 years, 3 years, and I did it, longer than that, but not as like, you've had a different experience. You've like trained this team by yourself with a little bit of help this winter, and that counts for a little bit more. And of course, the 7th place Iditarod schedule and competing in these mid distance races, it makes sense that you maybe are able to break down some of these races better than you're Brennan and
I don't know. I studied the race like before I started running dogs,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that really helped, like with the table 200 stuff, like with betting on it. I was trying to like pick these guys' brains, like I'd go have long conversations with like Pete and Richie and, even Dallas. Like I remember like we sat there at his banquet table for like a good hour, just like picking his brain on training, running dogs, building a team, like race strategy. And then, you go like take what he says and kind of maybe put a little bit out there and see like, well, what do you think about this? And say it to another musher. And then then you got a whole nother angle, or like maybe their side of things like, oh yeah, that's a good way of doing it, but you might encounter this or that. And so it's just like through that process. And then when I came aboard on Aaron's, it was like, he was like, hey, here's your dog team. I'm trying to win Iditarod and I'm, doing my own thing. So like, I don't really have any time to babysit or help you out. So kind of here's your crew and go figure it out. And if you got some questions, ask me or Tony. And that's kind of, I think that when you jump into it like that as well, like you're forced to just figure shit out on your own pretty quickly. And so you kind of go through all that trial and error stuff and experimenting and, and I'd pick their brains a bit. And then of course, like I wanted to, even though I was still a rookie and it was going to be like my first qualifiers and stuff, like I still wanted to go to these races and like have a good looking dog team and be somewhat competitive, be middle of the pack. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think like through that kind of process, like my upbringing through the sport kind of helped me gain a lot of knowledge a little quicker than maybe
Plus,
most people's.
You grew up in Alaska, done like the boxing thing. That was probably, some challenging training and mentally and physically. And just like, you grew up in Alaska. Like, dude, I still struggle to fucking set up a tent, So
yeah, no, that upbringing helps. And then like,
Yeah.
being an athlete and competing and all that kind of crap, like that definitely helps on a competitive level for sure. And then I think like the sports science behind it and the nutrition and things like that, like I was, that was a big part of my background, like before dogs. So like, I think it translates really well into dog mushing. These guys are athletes. So the way to build for a marathon or for a boxing match, it's really similar to for a dog race. And the nutrition behind it is very similar as well. So that all helps. I don't know.
Yeah.
It all plays a role.
How long would you say you were like closely following mushing before you actually got involved in it?
A couple of years. I mean, a year. like before I kind of started like running dogs casually, like I think I followed the race for like a year, or the race season, for about a year. And then that next winter, I kind of started like the weekend warrior mushing. And then I think I did like one full year of like real consistent mushing. And then the following year I started with Aaron. So Aaron and Tony.
Dang. That's just like that rise is just so quick, like so like you weren't like paying attention to Iditarod when you were growing up, or you kind of were, but you weren't
No,
like
not
really. Yeah.
No, and like I was into like I was a wrestler, so that was like that's a wintertime sport. And then on my free time, like, I was into things with motors. So like I was out there snow machining, and I'd see like dog teams out in Petersville, and I'd be like, what are these idiots doing,
Yeah.
Like that just looks miserable. Yeah, like I thought it was cool. And I knew like the big names, Jeff King and Boozer and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't follow it closely.
So essentially it wasn't until like your mid-20s until you actually kind of
6 years ago.
Dang.
6 years ago. And it was like 3 years of casualness and then 3 years of like serious dog running.
Dang. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I remember, I feel like people always ask, like, how do you get into it? And it's like, honestly, like a willingness goes pretty, like, that's about it. Like, just, are you willing to do it or not, And if you are, there's plenty of opportunities. And obviously,
go pick up a shovel out of kennel and start scooping away.
Yeah, it's really not hard to get a job, but it's hard to have the, the will to want to start doing it is one thing, but to continue to do it, because it's not like dude, if you go on like 1 30-mile run, Brennan, on the Denali Highway, after that run, you might be like, okay, that's kind of got a little bit boring there after like hour 2, it's like, it's not, a lot of people, it's not like you're careening around the corner all the time and it's super athletic, that can happen. But just a willingness to go out and do it. And then of course the financial aspect of, you're not really going to make any money. In fact, you're going to do the opposite.
And not everybody like has the opportunity to like come aboard and then just like start running dogs right off the bat. Like most mushers are not going to trust you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, come into their kennel. Oh yeah, here's a bunch of yearlings, like go train my future team. You've never been on a dog sled before. So like, there's that beginning like I got kind of lucky, I went to Dakota's, and Dakota's like a one-man show. So he was just kind of like, we got 22 puppies, the harness break, like go ahead, take a team, like we'll go out together. And so like I got kind of, thrown into it, and I was lucky to, have that. But there's a lot of people, they're just like a yard rat, for the first several months. And like, they don't even ever get a step on a dog sled, or maybe they get to go on the whip sled, and it's like not until maybe halfway through that winter or their second winter to where they're really getting some like dog training in.
Yeah. There's something to be said for like luck, getting with the right situation and getting those opportunities. There's something to be said for just your natural aptitude to like work with animals and be, you're on a freight train that's pretty hard to stop. And there's a very small margin for error. And if you make an error, it can be pretty high consequences. So I think that why you see a lot of hesitation from mushers to want to let, someone, especially, that kind of is something I would love to talk to, like some of the smaller mushers, like someone like Dee Johnro, who's like, she's like $120 or something, and she's going mushing. She's like 100 pounds. She's mushing 16 freaking dogs, and you gotta and you gotta be like the alpha. You gotta be, able to stop a team, like just stopping a team is pretty difficult with 16 of those dudes or dudettes.
Well, that's what I like kept running through my head through like these different areas on the Iditarod trail. It was like one, the folks that have done it like in their 60s and 70s or even 80s. I mean, there's been mushers that have, I think, like Norman Vaughn. I mean, how old was he?
I think he ran.
What was his oldest age?
I think he was. He ran, I want to say 10 Iditarods after he turned 70. And I think he might have ran it at like 81. Brennan's looking it up, Norman Vaughn.
But,
I'm going to go. Yeah.
It's just like, that is freaking incredible. Like, I mean, of course, they're going at a much slower pace, but it's like, I don't really care what competitive like level you're racing at. If you can get your ass down that trail and get to Nome and you're, 60 years plus, like you're one tough person.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we just talked to Gerhardt and, he's not a spring chicken. I think he's 55. And, that's like one of the craziest stories. There's obviously always some other crazier story from years past, but just kind of like you, where he had been mushing, but like in Michigan and like sprint dogs, and that's like really different. And then he just comes up to Alaska and he's, working for Mitch Seavey, and he's like, I qualifies all in 1 year. And I remember like I met him before his qualifiers, and I was like, dude, you're going to run all your qualifiers with like this little experience. But turns out he had some amazing dogs and great mentors and a recipe for success. But, I'm really impressed by that. And I mean, 55, 60 or 33, it's like still freaking hard to
I'm
do.
33 and in fairly good shape. And I'm like, this is fucking hard.
Yeah, no doubt. What'd you see, Brendan, on Norman?
Norman Vaughn competed in 13 Iditarods after the age of 70 and completed 4 of them. He finished 4 of them. So.
And what was his final run?
That is not in front of me at the moment.
Yeah, Wikipedia doesn't have like the deepest database of information on like, even the most famous of mushers, let alone
You'd
Norman
have to
Vaughn.
go to Iditarod, go to Race Archives, and
his
then look at the full
completed race was in 1990, and he died. And let's do some math here. Norman Vaughn, gotta look it back up. He died in 2005 at 100.
Damn, yeah.
So 15 years.
Jeff saying a story.
85 years old. He
85.
Well, you ready for this? Can you guys take a guess on the total time?
Like 15 days or 16 days.
Yeah, 14.
Not even close.
18.
Not even close.
20.
21 days, 10 hours, 26
Damn,
minutes.
Dude. The old Brendan, like 50 miles a day schedule.
Yep, we'll shut him down for 8 hours.
I mean, dude, listen, 85 years old, you get what you like you call your shot there completely. I mean, we've been saying that about our grandmother, like she can call any shot she wants at her age. And if you're running on Iditarod at 85, you're calling your shots. So, I mean, but even like the first one he completed in 78 was 22 days. So I guess,
dude, what's the stat on the first, the winner of the first Iditarod time? I think it's like 21 days.
Yeah.
That's
just the way it was.
That was like that was literally, they didn't even know. That wasn't who's going to get there faster. It's like, is this possible? Can we do this? That was more what that was like.
20 days. Yep.
20 days. Well, cool. So
we're getting way sidetracked.
Yeah. Well, dude, that was kind of a cool.
That was a good little intro. That was the intro to the episode. I like it.
Well, people wonder, how do you get in the mushing? And yeah, I think that's a good conversation to be had. And it's not something I ever really plan on having as like we're going to talk about this today, but it just kind of worked out. So yeah, obviously we want to talk about Eddie's Iditarod experience, and maybe we will get to that. But for now, just today, the Kobuk 440, which is the toughest race north of the Arctic Circle, finished. There was 12 mushers that started the race, and guess how many finished? All 12. You didn't get a chance to guess. I didn't give you a chance. I wanted to say it. And it's a crazy race. Jesse Holmes, was one of the favorites. I feel like we talked about it a little bit, Eddie, and I talked about it with a few other people. We were thinking Jesse Holmes, Richie Deal, and then Hugh didn't really have the quality of training he had last year just because he ran Iditarod. He didn't finish, but he ran 500 miles of Iditarod. So that's just perfect training.
Exactly. Like a 500-mile race before Kobuk, and then to have, almost a month in between to just kind of like give the dog some time off and then build them back up to a peak. Like that dog team's going to have some fire, it's going to have some spark. So yeah, I think last year he just had the perfect setup. This year, without Iditarod, without a mid-distance race anywhere in between there. And then plus, I don't know, Hugh he doesn't live in Chugiak. He doesn't live on site at the kennel there at Jim Lanier. So I think he only goes out there 3 days a week to run the dogs. So it's not I just don't think he got maybe the most ideal training and setup for the race.
Right. And still pretty darn good race.
But an excellent performance.
Michelle Phillips, she's somebody that's she's finished third in the Quest 1000. She's going to be fiercing up there.
She won the Quest this year on the Canadian side.
And then, Bailey Vitello and Jeff Dieter, it kind of, honestly, I feel like, look, I don't know a lot of the names at the bottom of the finishing list. I know Lauro Eklund, and he lives up near the Brooks Range and Coldfoot, I think. And he's living a wild lifestyle, lives out of a tent all winter long. And he's doing expeditions and he's
a woodsman.
He's a woodsman. Yeah. He's just by himself with his dogs.
Wow. And a male model.
Yeah. He's sponsored by some winter,
Filson.
Yeah. Filson. Is that a designer thing?
It is. Yeah. It's kind of high end.
Dude, I watched his video that they post. Did you see the video came out a month ago of that Filson put together with Lauro?
No, I've seen the one of Dean Osmar, and that's pretty badass.
Oh, okay. We should exchange these things. Lauro's was sick, and it was just he's walking around with his Filson jacket on, just with his dogs running around, and it was just really, you could tell that there was money behind the video, and it was really well put together. And I was just damn, dude, this guy's I kind of want to hang out with Laura. And I have we have a bunch of mutual friends. But yeah, he's never really, his goals are never to win the race. He just loves going out and being with other dog people and going on an adventure, doing his thing. He's always in the back, and it doesn't matter, and yeah, that's what I'm about personally. For me, I want to get back into mushing at some point in my 30s, and I'm not going to be up there in the front if that happens. So, but yeah, so I knew Jesse Holmes, Richie, Michelle, Hugh, Bailey, Jeff, and Martin, who's running Jeff King's dogs, and is working with Amanda Otto. And then I didn't know Kevin Hansen.
He's a local.
He lives in Kotzebue. Jesse Downey, Dempsey Woods, Jim Borkin. I didn't know those guys, but I figured that since I haven't seen the names and not, that they were probably going to be finishing towards the back of the pack. And when I look at the finishing list of these names, and I'm this is kind of exactly I would have guessed that, maybe not perfectly, but that kind of shook out like you would have expected it to. And it's awesome that everybody got to the finish line too.
Yeah, which is rare.
Yeah, can't remember a race I've ever followed where, I mean, unless you count like the Ace race or like a 50-mile race or whatever, like this is a 440-mile race through like really rugged terrain. It was 30 below and colder out there. It's friggin' sunny. And yeah, it's windy. And it's like to have everybody finish. This is a badass group of people. And even more importantly, a badass group of dogs. These dog teams are legit.
Hell yeah. No, it's a tough race. I in my opinion, you know, as far as the mid distance circuit goes, it's definitely arguably the toughest mid distance race out there. Right there with Kobuk. I mean, you know, I know.
Wait. You said about right there with Kobuk? You mean like with Cusco?
Yeah. Cusco, yeah.
You know, but you know, and I know there's like the Copper Basin's got some like some hardcore groupies that are like, oh, the Copper Basin's the toughest mid distance race. And I mean, it's got 18 hours of rest and 5 checkpoints. So like it's got tough terrain and it's got a tough trail for sure. And it definitely has
trail typically.
Yeah, it definitely has its challenges, but there's just another level of racing when you travel out to, you know, to Bethel for the Cusco or to Kotzebue for the Kobuk. Like it's just another,
like the
another
Cusco,
level of running dogs.
Like the terrain in the Cusco isn't the toughest terrain, but when you're talking about it's flat, you know, and the weather sucks typically and it blows typically. But you talk about, you know, the schedules you're running 100-mile runs, you're doing it in 40 hours, 45 hours, you know. That's what I mean by tough.
You know, I ran a 40-hour race and my first Cusco, I ran it in 40 hours in like 30 minutes or something like that. So I was under 41 hours and I still placed 12th.
That's insane, dude.
First place was like 37 hours or 36 and some change, you know.
That was Baylor's year.
And these guys, they're clipping along. I mean, it's 11-mile-an-hour race and for 300 miles, and not all of it is just flat and not all of it is just hard and fast. There's also these, you know, big open country, like, you know, for some people don't really know this, but like when you get a dog team and just like pure wide open country, nothing to really look at, like it can be a little like heady for a dog team, you know. And they're kind of like, whoa, where are we at? And then plus there's the glare ice. You run a dog team on glare ice for 300 miles, like just all the slipping and pulling and just getting a dog team to settle down and travel across these glare ice sections. And like, of course, when you are in glare ice, there's no markers, can't find the trail. And it's just a lot. And then 10 hours of rest, you know, and 90-mile runs. And depending on the year, it can be up to a 120-mile run from Antioch back to Tulisac.
If it's a good trail and that's what the musher decides.
It can be a 120-mile run. And like everybody that's trying to be competitive does it nonstop.
Damn.
Wow.
Yeah.
100
that race.
Miles. What's that a total? Dude. How long is that a take?
It's like a 15-hour run.
Yeah, I mean, like I had a group of 2- and 3-year-olds, and like so they were like, "What are we doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, good boy, straight ahead."
Oh gosh.
And like, you know, and they handled it really well. And then when we went up there this year and we took 3rd place, and like they were like, "This is a cakewalk." You know, there's just if you can get a dog team through some things in a still positive manner without like going over that threshold, and you build that trust with them, like now they're like, okay, whatever you want to do, Dad. And like this year when we went up there, like there was no questions. Like they were just
nice
motoring along. So, but yeah, I think those races are just extremely tough. Kobuk 440, this year they ended up taking like the shortcut, from my understanding, on the way over to Cayena, and with all the snow, high snow year, it ended up being like some of these longer runs ended up being a little shorter. So instead of like a 90 it was like a 75. So the snow does help, I guess, kind of shorten the trail a little bit. So this year they had a ton of snow, and they did have a little bit shorter of some distances, but still, a lot of those trails aren't traveled. They're soft, they're punchy. Like I said, your shortest run in that race is 75 miles. So it's usually 490s and a 75. That's what you're looking at.
490s and a 75, and you have 20 hours of rest. You can split it up any way you want. You don't have to do even. You don't have to do like an even 1 hour. You can do like an hour and 7 minutes. That's right.
And counts. The minutes count. So like, like, and I guess like I would stop like 10 minutes in Norvik, do like a little quick water break, maybe change some booties or something. And then like that. So like those 10 minutes and 5 minutes here extra, like it all adds up. And then by the time you get to your last checkpoint, it's, you might have a little less than 4 hours or something. That's kind of, I guess, what you're looking at, have somewhere between 3 and 4 hours for your last rest.
So do you ran the Kobuk last year?
Yep.
And how was your experience with the race?
It was good. I took third place. Who won it? Hugh Neff won it. Richie Deal took second. I took third. Ryan Reddington took fourth. And I can't remember who was all behind there, but Jesse Holmes was in the race.
Was Sass in the race?
Brent wasn't in it. Jeff King was there.
Still, that's a pretty good result. That's a great. Those are great names.
It was a stacked field.
Yeah.
I think Nick Petit was there. Heck, I don't know. There was a long list of
so there was like at least 20 mushers?
I don't know if there was quite 20 mushers.
All right, I'm looking at it. We got 3.
Sean.
Yeah, role reversal, dude.
Oh my gosh, what are you doing?
14 mushers. Deke Knackenborn, Martin Early, Jeff King, Derek Starr, Ryan Reddington, Richie Deal, Jesse Holmes, Kevin Hansen, Dempsey Woods, Jim Borkin, all were in the race last year.
Yep.
Okay. And Dempsey Woods was in it the year before that. And so was Kevin Hansen. So they run that shit every year. Okay. I feel like a dumbass.
Dempsey, Borkin, I gotta run and get a charger. Borkin, Hansen, and Dempsey are all locals.
There we go. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. So they're going to be running that every year.
Yeah, they're good mushers. They got great dog teams. Good guys.
So they're more kind of it's in the races in the area, so they're doing the race because it's there, but they're not necessarily like, you're not going to see those names in too many other races, right?
No.
Yeah, getting your dogs from Kotzebue to anywhere else is going to be a real pain.
Yeah, they might have goals. Some of them, maybe run an Iditarod or something. I know Jim. I think he wants to run Iditarod. So.
Nice. So this, are you surprised Jesse won? Did you like any thoughts?
Jesse freaking laid it down. I mean, pure domination.
Yeah.
Like from the get-go. And you could see how that team had a lot of fire in them after Iditarod. I think Jesse set him up right afterwards, given enough time off, plenty of short runs, like getting the speed back. And then plus Jesse's he's won that race. He usually goes up there every year. He's always done well. So
2017, so 6 years ago he won the race.
Yep. and he's always been up there in the top. And so, yeah, I just think Jesse had the right setup. He had a good game plan going into it. I think he managed his team really well. They looked awesome at the finish. So, I mean, it's no surprise. I mean, it's what I expected. And then, Richie and Michelle and Hugh, I mean, they all look good. They had great performance, but Jesse was just, his dog team was on another level.
And the reason that, and I talked about this a little bit before we recorded, but, it would be unreasonable to do 90, 90, 90, 75. For those to be your runs is unreasonable if you did it in January. All right. But these dog teams are having, at the least, these Iditarod teams have 3,000, maybe as much as 5,000 miles on them. And, this late in the year, there's just so much training that goes, and you can see the difference between the teams that have run these long races. Jesse Holmes and Richie Deal having been Iditarod veterans. Jeff Dieter's team was run by Katie Joe, Bailey Vitello, Iditarod this year. Martin Early, Amanda Otto ran the 550 with that team. And then, he just runs at a pretty aggressive schedule, so he's going to be up there anyways. But it's not surprising that they finished the way they did. Those Iditarod teams have so many miles, so much experience, so much trail hardness and toughness that that's not really that crazy of a schedule to pull off. And I think Martin did some camping out there on the trail. Not all of them ran those straight, but and then you see the teams that haven't run these long distance races that are the local teams. Right. Lauro Eklund, Crumman, he's traveled a long way to get there, but that they're running that more relaxed schedule. But it's not unreasonable to do but generally speaking, if you run a dog team 90 miles 3 times in a row, that you don't want to do that in December and January that you need to build a really, really good foundation of conditioning with your dogs to be doing something like that. And these guys have done it.
Yep. Yeah, no. And plus as dog men, they all have the abilities to manage a dog team for those 90 miles. They know how to do these 90 miles, and then they know what to do in the checkpoint to keep that dog team healthy. If there are little sorenesses or little dings that come along the way, they know how to get a dog back up on step, or, they know when to drop them, things like that, just to make these runs successful.
And
I have a question here. So
come on. Let me ask this question first.
Okay. Fucking Brendan.
Get out of here.
Damn.
Hey,
kind of pushy, man.
Hey, man. Geez. I was just curious about so the teams that just ran the Iditarod, they're not used to that schedule. So you kind of talked about that earlier. They kind of reset, and then kind of what goes into training up for these 5 longer runs that they're about to do.
Okay, fine. That's a good question. Fine.
It's with the base that they have. It's kind of like what Sean was talking about. With the base that they have at this stage of the season, you can go and practically do anything with them, long as you're managing them correctly. So a 90-mile run, when you have 4,000 miles on a dog team, it's easy for them. Or maybe I don't want to say easy, but they're very capable of it, and very capable of being successful with them. So it's just, you've started from September and it's now April. I mean, you got 7 months of just hard, tough training, lots of miles, lots of racing. A lot of people in Iditarod, a lot of these teams, they did a 9-hour run going into their 24s, or maybe they did a 9-hour run on the coast, or, So it's not like a 9-hour run is unheard of for them, or 10-hour run. And so, yeah, they're just hardened up at this point. So they're very capable.
Thank you for letting me ask a decent question, Sean.
Yeah,
go ahead, take over yet again.
Dude, I just want to
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Dude.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I love you, Brendan, and I'm sorry that I treated you poorly. And I'm gonna see you in 10 days, and it's gonna be great. We're gonna have a great time. So when you run a dog team 90 miles, part one of the question is what, especially when you've got another 90 coming up, and then another 90 coming up, and then a 75, right? When you're running these, what, like I don't have a ton of experience running 90. I've done it probably 5 times, So I am thinking, easy on the speed.
Yep.
Obviously, don't want to go too fast. Of course, you don't want to go too slow. That's probably not going to be a problem leaving the start line. But conditions looked like they weren't. I don't know. I didn't look at the speeds of the runs. I mean, obviously, if it's a good trail, you want to take, like, there's such a thing as taking too many breaks. It's like you think you should take more breaks. Sometimes, depending on how the dogs are doing, you might run 90 miles with just, a quick booty break or a couple, maybe a snack break. And so other times you might be stopping every hour, but yeah, I just, like, what's your approach when you're doing these, like, marathon runs with your team? You want to keep your pace, but you also want to, like, keep in mind you got a while to go, and you have a smaller margin for error when you run that distance all at once.
So there's a couple of different approaches to it, but like you said, speed, you don't want to over rev, but like this is, or can be in the past, a fast dog race. It can be done in like 60 hours. I think the record time, I think Jeff has a record, and Jeff and Tony Browning, I think, have a tied record for like the true course. And then I think there was a shorter year and Nick Petit broke that record. And I don't know, maybe Jesse Holmes too, because I guess all 4 of those guys have done that race numerous times and did a lot of hauling ass. So, like, it's not uncommon for these guys to almost average 10 miles an hour to 11 miles an hour.
It's just badass dogs. It comes down to just badass, hardened, robust dog teams,
and some badass dog drivers.
Yeah. Sure.
And so, yeah, you got a lethal combo there. But so there's a couple different approaches, of course, but those micro breaks are really important. And weather obviously plays a factor, because especially if it's really cold, you're going to need those breaks. You're going to need to get the calories and fuel into them. And if it's really hot out, same deal. Like, you're going to have to stop quite a bit, let the dogs cool off, make sure they're hydrated, whether that's through snacks or you're carrying a wet cooler. And that's kind of the other thing. Some people are more of regular snackers. Others might be more of I carry a wet cooler and I feed them like a wet meal on the trail at, let's say the 40 or 50 mile mark.
Yeah.
To get those calories and keep that hydration in them. Because when you're running dogs that long, you're gonna have a crippled up dog team if you're not taking those breaks, or you're not getting those calories and hydration fluids in them, and flushing the system and keeping those guys on step.
And Brennan?
Go ahead, Sean.
I was just looking at, like, resting. Like, when you rest for these, all right, you got these 90-mile runs. So is there anything different than what your routine would be? on a typical 50, 60 mile Iditarod run schedule, you know,
I
when
mean,
it comes to the rest?
I know what I do. So I mean, I think there definitely is a I know what works for me and works for my dog team, and it might be different. Some people, they can come in and they can get a meal into them right away. Some people need to wait an hour. But I guess you have that kind of wiggle room with a 4 or 4.5 to a 5 hour break. I mean, long as I think you're getting the fluids in them, you're getting the calories in them, and you're not overfeeding them. I mean, I think as long as you're doing that, then you're good to go. Now, if you got a dog team that's not eating and you're trying to do 90-mile runs, like, it's just not going to work. Or if you don't have a dog team that's drinking, like, it ain't going to happen. You're going to be struggling.
I was wondering if this was a race that when Lance was in his heyday, was this one that he would normally run, or is he just mostly focused on the Quest and Iditarod?
I don't know Lance's track record in the Kobuk.
Gotcha.
I still have the race archive up, and he ran in 2006, where it looks like they don't have like this. The deeper into the history of the race that you go, the like less accurate it seems to be, or they like less. But it looks like Lance might have won in 2006.
Okay.
And he participated in 2007. And let's see. Yeah.
And then the other question I had was
2005.
On the tracker, when looking at the mileage, it says 381. So you talked about, Eddie, you talked about how this year was a shorter route. Is that just like, am I just looking at like the wrong mileage on the wrong tracker or something, or is that the actual mileage?
No, because I remember mine was over 400 when I ran it on my GPS. And that was on my handlebar GPS. So, but that's what I heard was, I know there was like, they took a shortcut on one of the routes. And then due to the high snow year, you don't have to do as much zigzagging around. You can just basically go like straight across, on these overland trails. Because I mean, we're talking like, when you have 14 feet of snow, I mean, you're covering up all the bushes and shrubs and trees and what have you. And so, yeah, they're not having to zigzag around, and they can just kind of, make a more beeline approach to things.
Nice. Sean, I see you kind of, I see you doing some research over here. Is there anything that you're
I was just looking at like the way they broke down the rest, and it's like pretty much they all broke it down evenly, and you had your 3 rests, and they were somewhere between 5 to 6.5 hours. You do your 90 rest, 90 rest, 90 rest, 75.
Or yeah, it would be, because usually like it's a 90. So it rotates. It switches every year, from when you take off from Kotzebue. So next year it'll go to Selwick first, and that's the route. So it's like a 90 to Selwick. So you do like 4 hours there, and then you anywhere from 4 to 5. Some guys like to do a 3, so then they can beat the sun in the heat of the day on their 90 to Ambler. So then you go to Ambler, and it's a 90 there basically. And then you're going to do another 4 to 5 rest. and then you're going to have that the Kobuk loop, which is your 75. And then you come back to Ambler, you're going to do another 4 to 5, and then go from Ambler to Cayena. And then you're going to do your 4 to 5 there and then run straight to the finish.
Right. So it was more like a 71 or ish run to Kiana, and then let's see,
Should be about a 90 to
85 mile run to Ambler, and then
the Kobuk loop's like 75 miles, 70 miles.
Yep.
And then you go back to Ambler and you're going to do a rest. And then from Ambler to Selwick should be a good 90.
That's, according to this, it says 76. So
Okay.
yeah, shorter, definitely some shorter runs. So was it 90, 90, 90, 75 or 75, 90, 90, 90? But that's kind of the general gist of it. You know, it's these are 70 to 80 to 70 to 90 mile runs, and there's 4 of them. And yeah, it's a quiet, that's great. And there's some mountains. I mean, is it flat?
No. So you
Hell
go through
no.
the Brooks Range. I mean, you definitely do get a good amount of river running. There definitely is a lot of flat parts of the trail, but there's definitely a lot of like hills. I mean, there's nothing crazy as far as big, steep climbs or whatever. But when you're going through the Brooks Range, it's a soft trail. I mean, I remember like my dog teams just like falling through and disappearing, like, and all you could see was like their head sticking up, you know, and it was like,
Damn.
Just walling around, you know, and you're going up hills and mountains, and because these trails are not traveled.
This goes through this is the only sled dog race that goes through a national park, and that national park is not getting snow machined through. Right. So that's probably one of the softer sections.
Yeah. So like through the hills, I guess from Kotzebue all the way to Selwick, you have a pretty good trail. Like that's traveled. But then from Selwick to Ambler, that's not really traveled. So you have a soft trail there. Then that Kobuk loop, there's really, I mean, from when I did it and my experience, it wasn't a whole lot of traffic. It was a soft trail through there. But we had also just gotten like a foot of snow or 6 inches of snow, something like that. And then the trail leaving Ambler over to Cayena, that's not traveled. And that's where you go through the Brooks Range and all this. So it's really soft. And then from Cayena to Norvik, and Norvik to Norvik to the finish line, it's highly traveled. There's a little bit of traffic, I think, that you get from like Cayena to Norvik. So you're on the river, and that area is not bad as well. So it's kind of like closer you are to Kotzebue, obviously the better it gets.
Right. Kotzebue is a town that's kind of the hub of that area, you know, and Ambler, of course, is got people living in it. You know, which of these are these all the like the Kobuk loop, like Shungnak? Is that a village? Is that?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a few people there.
There's some guy named Greg there.
Yeah, there's a family or something.
Yeah,
I don't know what the population is, but I mean, it's a small little village. They all turn up though. I think like every single one of them is there at the checkpoint when you roll through, and they're there cheering you on. They got food. Amazing community. Like same thing in Kobuk. They're all there cheering you on, like watching the teams come through. And like there's some of these guys, they really know dog mushing too. And they know dogs, and there's a lot of old timers out there that used to have dog teams, and so it's a doggy community.
Dude, so we got stats are Kotzebue's 3,000 plus people. Ambler's 258. Shungnak 257. So I'll come up with some other ones, Brendan, while you ask your question.
I was going to ask you how the mass start was. Is that the only race that you've done where you have the mass start?
Yeah. Yeah. No, the mass start like definitely adds another level of excitement for the dogs.
Yeah.
And then plus you have like the start of that race is kind of wild because it follows along an ice road for a bit. And then there's a lot of snow machiners that follow along the trail for like the way to on to like Norvik. So like for that first 50 miles, you have a lot of vehicles going up and down the ice road, people pulling over, honking their horns, cheering you on. So like snow machines everywhere, people. So like that first like 50 miles, it's hard. It's hard to like keep your dog team like settled down under 11 miles an hour. Like you're on the drag pretty heavy, like easy guys, because it's a lot of excitement. And then plus with a mass start, it's just you have a large group of mushers just all traveling right next to each other, basically. It kind of takes a good 40 miles for us to get a little spread out.
And what is like in terms of the order of how you're spread out, is that based on your bib number? Is that just based on how you like pull up to the start line?
So yeah, they have it marked. So from left or from right to left, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, with your bib number.
Okay, so it is based on that. And then so what was your tactic in that? Like, are you like full send?
I left like last.
You purposely left last?
Yeah, I just let everybody go.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about that in our last recording, and Sean was saying that that's probably what he would do too.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends, I mean, it was more teams for me to end up eventually passing, but I knew what I wanted to approach the race with, and I knew like what I could do with my dog team. And I knew there was going to be some dog drivers that really went out there and kind of like set the tone. And I figured that a lot of them would follow. And I guess I didn't think it was going to be sustainable. And I thought a lot of these guys would blow up. And that's what ended up happening. Like, I think I came into Norvik second to last. And then I came into Selwick like third or fourth from last. And then I left Ambler in fourth place. And then when I got back to Ambler, I was in third place.
Wow.
And so by the time I was back in Ambler, I was in third place all the way to the finish line.
Nice. Okay.
So to finish the populations that no one cares about, but I'm going to tell you anyways, is Norvik and Selwick are around 700. And then Kiana and Ambler are in that 200 to 300 range.
So those are the smallest.
Dude, it's crazy. Like the terrain there. Is it confusing when you are like, are you fully aware when you go from lake or sea ice to land all the time out there?
Not always, because I mean, it can be really flat and it can be stormy, and sometimes you're like, is this a lake? Am I on like, am I in some like wide open ocean country? Like, what is this? So, and the rivers are big and wide. And it's really beautiful. Like if you get some clear weather, it's some pretty country, and there's a lot of caribou out, a lot of wildlife. Like I saw a wolverine on the trail. I saw a bunch of caribou herds. So yeah, a lot of caribou action on that Kobuk loop.
Brennan, what do you know about wolverines?
I know that we saw, let's see, on the bucket list when we did our trip to Denali. I remember that our tour guide, shout out to our tour guide. Remember her name, Sean?
Patty.
Shout out to Patty.
I think so. It was Patty. Yeah, for sure.
It was 100% Patty.
Okay.
She like made like a bucket list, and Wolverine was on the list, and I'm pretty sure that we saw a Wolverine, but we didn't actually see it, kind of thing. Like
It's just like a little blur.
it was like
you know?
it ran across the road, and by the time we actually saw it, it was already in a bush, kind of thing. But I mean, that's the extent
That
I know
counts.
of Wolverine. I didn't actually like really see it. The only other way I know Wolverine is X-Men.
I was gonna say, did the Wolverine have sideburns or what?
And look like a sexy Hugh Jackman. Yeah, come on. You can't deny that.
When I came to Alaska, like to go back to you growing up, Eddie, in Alaska, and me being from Atlanta, like I literally thought Wolverines, like I didn't know
I thought it was made up.
I didn't know. I thought that was just the X-Men. That was the end of how
Yeah.
that's what a Wolverine is. And then I thought the sled dogs were like, no, I thought like reindeer. I thought that was just like a mythical thing, like reindeers are that's just like a Santa thing, like it was brutal. It was brutal. And then the first thing, like I showed up, like first thing in Alaska, I'm going like to Kodiak, the southern end of the island, like around these hardened fishermen. And, I was with my family and they were very like forgiving and understanding of how green I was. But like we would go to the cannery and I just like see this like guy that's like sitting down on the bench or whatever, just like waiting for the phones. And I'm like looking at him like, I don't even know like how, like, what do I say? How do I start the dude? And because my mom and Brendan worked at CNN for a long time. And I just like, I hadn't figured out politics or anything. As to represent my family, I wore a CNN hat, like bright red CNN hat. And
that went over there.
And I was just like walking around these fishermen with like my CNN hat. And I remember one guy, I don't know, just some random guy, he like looked at me, he's like, so you like CNN? And I was just like sitting there, like I was like, I need to burn this fucking hat, dude.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Not a good way to make friends.
No, I didn't make any friends. Most of them are very, very difficult to. I didn't have anything in common though. Like I didn't know what to say. They'd be like talking all this like vocabulary about fishing that I just didn't know. And they'd be talking with like my aunt and uncle who've been there for 20 years or whatever. And I'd just be sitting there like, yeah, totally. I know how to tie those knots. And I also can tie these knots. And I don't know how to tie any knots. But now Eddie knows how to tie a bowline.
Oh, yeah.
Tie a ball. Oh, dude.
No.
What's that?
I said that's the only knot you need to know.
Yeah, the bowline and in mushing. Yeah. So this is kind of getting into the weeds of things, but what kind of like what's your gang line setup?
As far as like the length?
Well, what kind of like do you use like the cable kind? Do you use a rope?
Yeah, I use a cable, 8-foot sections. And I'm at 39-inch tugs.
And so the cable and the sections are separable and removable. So that's nice. You have continue on. You said your necklines and tug lines.
Yep. So I run necklines. I do like a 39-inch tug. And
that's like a full, like, I can't remember the measurements, but there's basically two lengths, and there's some other alternative styles too, but like the full length.
Yeah.
With X-backs.
Yep.
Your standard looking dog
harness. So like people that run like half harnesses, they'll run a shorter tug line, and probably shorter gang line sections as well.
And that's like back to those philosophies that like mushing, dude, everybody's got their own opinions on this and that. And I think that they all work and it all depends on everything. So
I think they all work. I think they have different purposes. I think like a half harness or those like buggy harnesses.
Which ones are the buggy harnesses?
just like ones that go across the chest.
That's like the Pete Kaiser does that, right?
Yeah, Jesse, I think Milla. It's become pretty trendy over the past like 2 years.
Yeah, I saw that Riley had some too.
Yeah, Riley made a bunch. She's been getting this sew on, very crafty. They look good though. So
nice.
I think, and I mean, I think this is all factual, not even opinion. You're not going to find a harness where you get more power than in an X-back harness. An X-back harness, you're going to get like the optimum amount of power. Dogs pull from their chest. They want to feel that. And those X-backs, the way they fall along the dog's body, it's just, you're going to get the most amount of power. Now, with a half harness.
Before you move on, Brendan, X-back harness, what does that mean to you?
I'm thinking like right here.
Yeah.
Right?
Right here. Yeah.
Right here.
I don't know. If I'm a dog,
Well, it's like
an X that's coming across my chest and over my shoulders.
What's it called though? What is the harness called?
X-pack.
Back.
Oh, back. Oh, I was hearing it as X-pack.
So the X
is on the back.
Boom, right? And it's not, the X is actually not, it's just connecting the different parts of the harness that are really important and keeping them kind of together and organized, but they're not. The X is actually.
What beer is that real quick? What are we sponsored by today?
We are officially sponsored by Alaska Brewing Company.
Hey, I like it.
So I saw limited edition and I was like, I don't know if that's any good or not, but it says limited edition, so I'm buying it.
Got to do it. Good sales move there. Good marketing move.
Yeah.
All right.
Good marketing on their part. It got me, and I wasn't disappointed.
And you're drinking another, and you're a happy camper.
I am.
Nice.
And I just moved out of my cabin in Nenana, and I brought back one of my race bibs, and it's like sitting in front of me, and it says Alaska Brewing on it for the Yukon Quest.
Nice.
Oh,
but
nice.
yeah. So for all you mushers out there and fans of dog mushing, drink Alaska Brewing because they sponsor Iditarod. They sponsor the Quest. They're big supporters. So
they literally are. This podcast is literally brought to you by Alaska Brewing Company.
Hey.
Here at Alaska Brewing Company, it's not just about brewing. It's not just about beer. It's about dogs. It's about the people. Because at Alaska Brewing Company, we care. We care about Alaskans.
Bam. And that's a fucking wrap.
Dang. They didn't even have to pay us. They didn't even have to pay it. Sean, are you drinking Alaska beer right now or what?
No, I'm drinking also a local Alaskan beer. It is a King Street brewery, and it's an American pale ale, my favorite type of beer. And
King Street needs to like hop on the bandwagon here and start sponsoring some races.
Let's go. Shout out to King Street. Let's go.
Yeah, there's like, dude, that's honestly, there's so many breweries around here, man. Like, they should just throw us like $400, and then, and if you added all the breweries in Anchorage alone, $400, that'd be like a $20,000 sponsorship for the Iditarod,
The math might be a little wrong, but
don't worry about it. I'm an econ major, Eddie. I'm an econ
major. We're gonna leave the numbers to Brendan.
Okay, all right. That's for the best.
Here we go. All right. So I wanted to go back to full circle.
I don't even remember what we're talking about.
No.
Harnesses. But yeah, we can forget the harnesses. There's a lot of harnesses. We don't need to talk about them all, but there you go.
X-backs, they're on the back, not on the front.
X-backs.
Got it.
Yeah.
First of all, I have to clarify, I did not work at CNN for very long. And what I did at CNN was I was a tour guide. All right.
Okay, so that's true.
As it relates to politics, I don't even go there. Right. So I don't have anything to say about politics, but
I think things though. I think things about politics.
I think things. Yeah,
I think things, and I say them with other people that I want to talk about it with, but I'm not gonna say things.
Here's the thing:
the general. I'm not gonna make my opinions known to everybody.
Here's the thing. You grow up, for me, you grow up with parents that worked at CNN. They worked at CNN when CNN first started, and
in the 80s, dude.
There's no other like
first time we had 24 hours news. I'm sorry, go.
No other news network like it. But like for me, growing up around the news all the time with mom and dad working there, it's just like I'm so over it, you know. So I just like, you know, I removed myself from that, but I just wanted to follow up. I didn't work at CNN that long. What I did there was a tour guide. It was my first job out of college.
Dude, no judgment, man.
Hey,
you don't got to worry about that.
But Sean's like, oh, mom and Brendan,
and my dad,
they worked at CNN forever, and it's really just mom and dad.
Yeah, mom and dad, dude, they combined for like 40 something years there.
Yeah, that's 40.
Reporting the news is in your blood, man.
Yeah. Dude, that's it. Because here at King Street Brewery, it's not just about the people; it's about the beer. Back to you, Tommy.
No, and then the other thing I was thinking about, you said something in a previous podcast, Eddie, where you were talking about how you love. We were talking about food, and you were like, "Oh, I just eat moose meat like every night or whatever."
Yeah.
And so I was going in my freezer, Sean, and I found you came home with some moose meat, and somehow I hadn't cooked it yet. And this was just like a couple weeks ago.
Carlos mentioned this to me.
Yes, I pulled it out and whipped up some like Mexican style food and used that as like the ground beef, what I would normally do with ground beef, and it was so freaking good. I was like, I need more of this moose meat, and so I was thinking about you, Sean, because you gave it to me, but I was also thinking about you, Eddie, because you're like, oh, I live off that stuff. That's all I need, man.
It's rocket fuel, man.
It's
what
is,
my body runs off of. But now I'm in the big city, and so I'm running off McDoubles.
Oh.
Real drop in quality there.
Yeah, I think my body.
Yeah, dude. Anchorage being here, the food, I make some poor decisions. But I'm scheming up plans to get some more moose meat here in the fall. So fingers crossed that it works out.
My fingers are very crossed.
Dude, the thing is, Brendan and I are scheming to go to a Bruce concert that's in like the beginning of September, which is kind of interfering with the moose season a little bit, but I might be able to make it work. All right.
Squeeze a hunt in there.
Hey man, anything to go see Bruce with Pops, you know?
Yeah, you gotta do it.
Gotta do it.
You gotta come up to see Pinches playing ping pong at the Alaska State or the Salmon Fest, but also at the same time, it's expensive to come to Alaska, and I get it.
Yeah.
What are we talking? Are we still recording right now?
Okay. All right. So
we got derailed.
We've got derailed officially.
Completely.
But we can't come back. If there's any other thoughts about the Kobuk or that we want to wrap up on, obviously we're gonna have Eddie back on to break down his Iditarod run, his Rookie of the Year run, his 7th place finish run, his falling off the sled run. Gosh, he's probably tired of hearing that. But yeah, anything else we want to bring to the table in this one?
I mean, I don't know. I think we covered quite a bit of the Kobuk. Jesse dominated. Other teams all got across the finish line, which is a huge accomplishment. So, and everybody to be like good spirits, good looking dog teams. So yeah, I think it was a great race up there for everybody.
Yeah, people forget about the Kobuk there. They, Iditarod's over, racing's over. We'll see you in a year. The Iditarod's such a relief to be over, whether I'm in it or I'm training someone else's dogs or whatever, that I don't even really pay attention to the Kobuk much. So I'm glad to
like get back into it, because like you said, like after Iditarod happens, like for most mushers and most handlers, it's like, thank God. We are finally done. You know, like everybody wants to go have a life at that point, or like go do fun shit with their dogs, you know, go do fun little trips, or, you know, go on vacation or whatever. Cause we've been like hard at it grinding since like September or August.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jesse Holmes, Star of Life Below Zero on National Geographic. This podcast is brought to you by National Geographic's Life Below Zero. Okay. It's also brought to you by that. But it's fun how many times, and working in tourism industry, I constantly am, when I mention mushing, they're like, oh, you know, I can't remember the name of the show, but there's this guy on there, and I'm pretty sure he won the Iditarod. And I'm like, Jesse Holmes, and no, he didn't win the Iditarod, but he won Rookie of the Year. But he's actually a friend of mine, and he's, you know, and I've watched one episode with him on it, and it was hilarious. He look, here's the thing, dude. Mad respect to Jesse being on that show. That's hard work. Like I've talked to him about it. He's like, dude, like he's working just as hard as anyone else would be working to make the amount of money he gets from that. And you have to create storylines, you know, and sometimes like things aren't that exciting when you live in the middle of nowhere. You're just kind of chopping some wood, you know, getting some dog food, running dogs. Like it's like sometimes it's not that exciting. But anyways, he makes these awesome storylines. And one of them was like he was trying to get the boat out of the freezing river.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I don't know, man. I don't know how it went, how it actually went, but basically they were like trying to make this drama of like, if he can't get the boat out of the river, like he's totally screwed. So he was like, you know, the narrator is like, if Jesse Holmes can't get the boat out of the freezing river, he won't be able to feed his salmon to his dogs. And the dogs are going to need to be the only way that he can be transported throughout the wilderness of Alaska. And he won't be able to survive and this and that. And I'm like, dude, he's just pulling his boat out of the river for the winter. Like, this is like a very simple task. And so like, he hooks up the truck to the boat because the truck's on the bank of the river, the boat's in the river, and he starts pulling the boat out of the river onto the bank. And then like he says, you know, fuck or something, and they bleep it out, and then like it goes to commercial, and he's like, you know, they're like, oh no, just want to get it, and we'll be back to after the break. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then you go back to it, and he just pulls it out of the water, and it's totally fine. Anyways, that show is pretty entertaining. Characters on that show, and I'm stoked that Jesse's on there, and I think he's doing great, and I love watching it, and you guys should watch it too.
Hell yeah. No, he's Jesse's an awesome dude. He's a good dog, man, awesome sportsman. Like, you know, I was telling you guys before, he was the only one willing to lease me some dogs for Iditarod.
Yep.
You know, it was the only musher. And you know, and I'm sure there's maybe some others, but I made a lot of phone calls, and Jesse was like the first guy to be like, hey,
awesome. I want to. Yeah, I think that like for some reason there might be some people in the mushing community that kind of think like since he's on TV, he's kind of like, oh, you're not a real, you know, you're not, come on, dude, this guy's like a TV star. It's like, no, dude, he's like living as genuine of a mushing life as anybody could. And he's the real deal. And I don't know why anyone would have a problem with him. He's a really good dude.
He has to haul all of his own water. He has to haul in all of his firewood. He has to haul in all of his food and supplies to live.
25 miles from the main highway. In the winter, only accessible by snow machine. And in summer, it's a dirt road or dog team. Yeah.
So, you know, there's like that whole rush to prepare for winter, like get the big stockpile of wood and you know, all these things to prepare to live off the road system, you know, and like he doesn't really glamorize it either, like, or glorify it. You know, it's not like he's on social media, like, look at me living this rough and tough, you know, like lifestyle. Right. And I'm off the road system, because there are some people that do that. And like Jesse's just living his life out there, enjoying it with dogs. And he only had one handler for the most part all throughout the season. And he's got 70 something dogs, 70, 80 dogs.
Damn.
He's, training all these guys, raising pups, B teams. Like, he does a lot of races. Like, yeah, I mean, you know how difficult that is.
Yeah, that's
to prepare for. And so, yeah, Jesse lives a tough lifestyle, and he does a lot of it by himself. He works extremely hard. And then, like, these, film crews come in to, like, film an episode, and he's got to, like, basically shut down everything he's doing and cater to them for, like, 10 days, 7 days, and film these episodes. And, like, yeah, like you said, come up with storylines. And so, like, I know it can take away from, like, his dog mushing and training and, like, a distraction, but it's part of his income and it's what he does. And so, and I think every other musher out there, if they had the opportunity, they'd be doing it too. But like you were kind of saying, there's a lot of haters of it, whoa, TV star, Hollywood.
like, dude, he's doing it, man. And it's
farthest thing from Hollywood, I feel like.
And he's representing me and Brendan as, one of the most successful all-time mushers from the southern region of the United States. I think he's from Alabama. He's lived in Georgia, and so it's fun talking to him. He's got a little bit of an accent.
And dirty South.
Yeah,
I love
dude,
the accent,
good dude.
Man. I love it.
Right on. Well, I think we should wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're at a good point. Like I said, we'll be following back up with Eddie to more specifically talk about his Iditarod run. With this is the last race of the season of significance. There might be some other smaller ones regionally and whatnot, but this will probably be the last race that we talk about for the season, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
There ain't nothing.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So we'll have some more episodes coming up with some guests on, and we'll kind of be talking to different folks who finished the race or who were involved in the Iditarod. And hope you guys enjoyed the episode.